are some general rules, ladies and gentlemen, that apply to your discussions. You must follow these rules in order to return a lawful verdict. And again, I'm referring to the jury instructions, a copy of which will go back to the jury room with you, all right? You must follow the law as it is set out in these instructions. If you fail to follow the law, your verdict will be a miscarriage of justice. There is no reason for failing to follow the law in this case. All of us are depending upon you to make a wise and a legal decision in this matter. This case must be decided only upon the evidence that you have heard from the testimony of the witnesses and have seen in the form of exhibits and evidence and these instructions. The case must not be decided for or against anyone because you feel sorry for anyone or are angry at anyone. Remember, the lawyers are not on trial. Your feelings about them should not influence your decision in this case. Your duty is to determine if the defendant has been proven guilty or not in accord with the law. It is my job as the judge to determine a proper sentence in the event the defendant is found guilty. Whatever verdict you render must be unanimous. That is, each juror must agree to the same verdict. Your verdict should not be influenced by feelings of prejudice, bias, or sympathy. Your verdict must be based on the evidence and on the law contained in these instructions. Deciding that verdict is exclusively your job. I cannot participate in that decision in any way. Please disregard anything I may have said or done that made you think I preferred one verdict over another. You may find the defendant guilty as charged in the indictment or guilty of such lesser included crime as the evidence may justify, or not guilty. If you return a verdict of guilty, it should be for the highest offense that has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. If you find that no offense has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, of course, your verdict must be not guilty. The verdict must be unanimous. All of you must agree to the same verdict. Only one verdict may be returned as to the crime charged. The verdict must be in writing, and for your convenience, the necessary form has been prepared for you. And it reads as follows. In fact, this is it. And you'll see what we refer to as the style of the case. State of Florida versus David Russell Holbrook, and it's a very simple verdict form. We, the jury, find as follows as to the offense charged in the indictment, and there are four options. Guilty of first-degree premeditated murder as charged in the indictment. The second option is guilty of second-degree murder, a lesser-included offense. Guilty of manslaughter, a lesser-included offense, and not guilty. There is a blank for the signature of the foreperson and the printed name of the foreperson, and it will, of course, be dated. In just a few moments, you're going to be taken to the jury room by our court security. The first thing you should do is to choose a foreperson who will preside over your deliberations. That person should see to it that your discussions are carried on in an organized manner and that everyone has a fair chance to be heard. It is also the foreperson's job to sign and date the verdict form when all of you have agreed on a verdict and to bring the verdict form back to the courtroom when you return. During your deliberations, you must communicate about the case only with one another and only when all jurors are present in the jury room. If a juror, for instance, goes to the restroom, the deliberation should stop until the juror returns. You are not to communicate with any person outside the jury about this case. Until you have reached a verdict, don't talk about the case in person or through the telephone, writing or electronic communications, for instance, a blog, Twitter, email, text, or any other means. Do not contact anyone to assist you during your deliberations. These communications rules apply until I discharge you at the end of the case. If you become aware of any violation of these instructions or any other instruction, you must let me know by giving a note to one of our court security officers. If you need to communicate with me, send a note through one of our bailiffs. If you have voted, do not disclose the actual vote in the note that you might want to send to me. If you have a question, I will talk to the attorneys before I can furnish an answer to you, so it may take some time. You may continue your deliberations while you wait for an answer. I will answer any questions, if I can, in writing or orally here in open court. Now, during the trial, items were received into evidence as exhibits, and there are many exhibits, as you have seen. You may examine whatever exhibits you think will help you in your deliberations. Now, many of these exhibits will be sent to the jury room with you when you begin your deliberations. If you wish to see any of the exhibits, for instance with biological fluids or staining, please request that in writing. In closing, let me remind you that it is important that you follow the law spelled out in these instructions in deciding your verdict. There are no other laws that apply to this case. Even if you do not like the law that must be applied, you must use that law. For more than 2 centuries, we have lived by the Constitution and the law. No juror has the right to violate rules that we all share. One of the rules we all share in the law of the state of Florida is this, that 12 persons go back and begin deliberating this case. In a case that is scheduled to take a long period of time, courts often, and I did, have 2 alternates selected. And at this time, the alternates are going to be released. And that is Mr. Ebbing and Mr. Fuentes. If you just give me one moment. You, of course, have heard all of the evidence, everything that's been done. You're aware of it. I would ask this, that you not talk about the case with anyone, look at any information about the case, anything of that nature until you have learned that our jury has reached a verdict. It is highly unlikely that something could happen that we would need to call you back, but it is a possibility that does in fact exist. So we thank you very much for your service. You see how integral juries are and how important what you do is. And with our thanks and my hope that you will not apprise yourself of any information. You certainly can stay if you wish to see what occurs, but you don't have to. And so at this time, with the thanks of us all, you are excused. And everyone will rise. All right, be seated. Thank you. Is there anything further from either party? There being nothing further, we will be in recess awaiting a jury verdict. Yeah, take your notes with you at this time. Thank you. Right, everyone can be seated, and we are in recess. Anything further? I look forward to seeing our representatives from the media in my chambers right now.